Hiya Toys has officially put up the solicitation for their Mechagodzilla 1993 figure, and there are a few things that are definitely worth talking about here. So here we have a batch of the solicitation photos. They are still using that grainy photo filter that we saw with the first classic Godzilla release. My guess is they're trying to replicate what a shot might look like from a 90s film. And here we have Mechagodzilla. Here he is in his flight pose. Here we've got a more head-on shot, him in the streets. Here he is again, head-on in that more grassy terrain. Now, there's a few things here that are worth talking about. One is the proportions. I didn't expect that this would be a little bit on the leaner side. He does look a little bit skinny. And this is surprising because the suit, from what I remember in the movie, is rather bulky. And merchandise that I see of the suit tends to be on the bulkier side. Here he does look a little bit slimmer and maybe a little bit more articulated as a result. Like, I expect that he maybe has a little bit more freedom to move around as a result of this. Here, just looking at the INS Hobby solicitation, like, this is the original photo that we saw of the resin prototype at San Diego Comic-Con. And maybe it's just the angle, but I didn't get the impression that he was going to be... I didn't get the impression that he was going to have these proportions, right? Like, this is probably the most comparable photo here. He definitely looked wider and thicker in the thigh area than he does in these images. So I am a little bit curious to see if this is actually what we'll get, or will this be yet another casualty of Haya taking the feedback and making the adjustments to the sculpt and then just delaying the figure without really telling us anything. We're experiencing that right now with Godzilla Evolved and with the 91 Hokkaido suit and even the G14, right? Those are all due about now and we haven't heard anything. So I'm very curious to see, like, if they do anything to change the sculpt or if this is what they go for. To me, these proportions actually make this figure a little bit more appealing to me because I have the figures that show him a little bit more bulky. This, he's a little bit thinner, looks like he can move a little bit more, reminds me a little bit of like the Pipeworks games. And so I prefer these proportions on the figure, and I hope that they don't go and change them. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. Second, the accessories. So we can see down here, he has an alternate pair of hands and then the two G crushers. Right, and we can see that over here. So he's got the alternate hands, more like the flight pose hands, and then he's got the G crushers, which just plug into the forearms. What they don't mention is the plasma grenade that comes out of the belly. Right, like there it is there, but you can see it's not there here. So I'm assuming that is just a piece that they've failed to include in the description. Alternatively, this is a piece that is... So, like, you're able to hide it on the actual figure itself and then put it into place when it's needed, but I very much doubt that that's the case. So I assume that if it's shown in the photo, it's going to be included. The fact that it's not in this layout, it's a little bit concerning, but I'm sure that they will rectify at some point. They will clarify that this is going to be included with the figure. Now let's talk a little bit about the price tag. This guy's coming in at $70, which is $19 more than the standard price point we've come to know. And that's about a 38% increase, which is sizable. Shimo came in at $60, and I do feel as though Shimo is a much larger figure. This guy coming in at 8.5 inches, that seems to be about right in scale with the other Godzillas that we're getting first. I think people underestimate how much bigger Mechagodzilla was in the Heisei film. But the $70 price tag is really interesting to me. I do not believe that this is a result of the subject we talked about on Monday. And real quickly, I would like to thank everybody for handling the discourse around that topic rather gracefully. I'm very pleasantly surprised, so I really appreciate that. So I don't think it's that. maybe it's just the way that the engineering works. Like, notably, they haven't mentioned anything around alternate head pieces. So the same head that's going to be able to sort of be in this normal pose is also going to be able to do the upright flying pose. So maybe that's a point of engineering that they needed to bake into the price. There's nothing here that mentions die cast or anything like that. So I don't think it's that. So I'm really not sure where the price tag is coming from. That being said, this price tag seems more in line with what I would have expected a figure of this nature to be like. To me, up until this point, the $51 price tag has seemed like almost too good to be true. The $70 here brings this closer in line with what you might expect when you compare it to something like the Super 7 Ultimate. Super 7 Ultimate was $15 more than this, and he came with extra set of hands, and he came with the Garuda and the jet thruster effects pieces. Right? Like, so to me, that seems like a good place for this figure to be at. Like, it's $70. It's pretty big. But if you go with the extra $15, you get the Super 7, which is a little bit bigger and has a little bit more in the package, right? So like that, the price tag doesn't bother me too much. I'm just kind of curious where this is coming from. Is it that the prices up to this point have not been sustainable and they've needed to sort of bump up the costs across the board? Obviously, at this point, like, this is the outlier. This is not the rule. So until we get the next figure and we see that it's also at an inflated price point, it's too early to draw any conclusions. Shimo being $60, we kind of expected because she's a lot bigger. Mechagodzilla being $70 is interesting, and I think it's worth paying closer attention to. Some folks have mentioned that you might be able to see here on the back space for the back plate to come off and for the Garuda to attach. I'm actually very surprised that Garuda wasn't included in this release, especially at the $70 mark. And I'm very curious to know if they intend to do Garuda. Like, if it, like, is this actually what we're seeing here? Like, I don't know if you can't really see it there. You can see it most in the flying pose. There's that seam up here. Are we going to be seeing something where there's another Mechagodzilla and that's like the Super Mechagodzilla that comes with Garuda? Or is it going to be a Fire Rodan that also comes with a Garuda and an alternate headpiece for Mechagodzilla to bring in? So, I'm not really sure. And I'm also wondering if it looks like the eye pieces might be able to detach so that you can put in the damaged eyepiece if you were to get the Fire Rodan. Very interesting stuff going on here. I am very curious to learn more about this release and what comes after. This is the last. Well, no, actually, Mecha King Ghidorah is the last classic monster that we know is in the pipeline for right now. So I'm very, very interested to see what comes of this. So yeah, price $69.99 US. Release time Q3 2025. If they go back and redo the sculpt like they've done with the past couple of figures, then maybe it'll be actually closer to Q4 or Q1 2026. We don't know because their communication's pretty absent, to be honest. So yeah, if you wanted to order this from Hiya directly, $70 plus a $30 flat rate shipping, but you get it rather quickly. If you would like to go the route of INS Hobby, at this time I'm recording this, it's still on the deposit stage. Later today, it will be updated to be the full solicitation. INS Hobby gives you the option to do a 30% discount, or you can pay the full thing off and get a 5% discount. Sorry, it's a 30% deposit or a full price, and you get the 5% discount, and you get it around the same time that Hiya releases. Well, right when Hiya releases it domestically in China. So I'll throw my link in the description if you're interested in picking this guy up from INS Hobby to support the channel. And let me know your thoughts. This is an interesting one for at least a few reasons. Yeah. I like this pose. It looks like a dinosaur. It does look like the tail's got some flexibility in it too, which is nice. Anyway, yeah, very, very curious to hear what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comment section down below. Put the link in the description if you want to support the channel, buy the figure for my and this hobby. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend.